Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is John-Paul Savari. Today I'm joined by Yannick Patch, and these are your 5 headlines for today. The Building and Construction Agency said no excavation works are permitted until fresh geotechnical report is concluded on a Birkirkara house, which is about to collapse. The FKNK has suspended the membership of a hunter who allegedly shot down a protected bird species yesterday. Former Progress Press director has received over €240,000 from Keith Schembry's offshore companies. The Malta Entertainment Lobby has demanded an apology from Jose Herrera after he claimed that business is not in the IQ of artists. And a critically ill Maltese man in India has not yet been given the go-ahead to travel, the High Commissioner has confirmed. Also, make sure to stick around to the end of our episode where we'll have an interview with Caroline Tissot from FELTOM, the federation representing English teachers in Malta. Yannick?
So, a geological study has raised concerns about the safety of ongoing construction works in Birkirkara. The study found a worrying link between 4 building collapses and the type of rock on which they were built. The link emerges from a study commissioned by Matthew Montebello, whose family is currently living in fear that they might be the next to be buried alive beneath the rubble of their home, Birkirkara, due to nearby construction works. The study, which was carried out by well-known geologist Peter Gutt, and which is based on data obtained from borehole drilling on site, found that Montebello's home is situated on a layer of rock that is particularly problematic and unpredictable. According to the report, the rock it has a particularly high level of porosity, making the structure comparable to chalk. It states that the excavation poses a high risk of failure, with there being a high risk of catastrophic damage to third-party property should the excavations proceed. Following Lovin Malta's story yesterday, the Building and Construction Agency has said that no excavations will be permitted before the conclusion of its own geological study. It also dismissed Gutt's report as a preliminary one, despite similar concerns being raised by the project's architect's vision statement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a worrying situation to see. Obviously, this isn't the first time this has been, brought to public attention over past couple of years, with most notably, over a year ago actually, when Miriam Patch unfortunately died in her home when it collapsed on top of her due to works being done on a construction nearby. So eerily similar story, tale to the one we have now today of Matthew Montebello. And his family, speaking to us, have told us how they're fearing for their life and how they're afraid that, this construction work, which they had done their own geotechnical survey, even though it might be preliminary, it did result in a geo risk level 1, which is the highest risk of possible collapse. And his family is living in this house in fear that, it might collapse. And that is a reality in Malta, that these houses could collapse. His 2 daughters are now staying in the parents' bedroom because of this. They've also, requested to have some temporary accommodation in the meantime. And the BCA has said that it has no problem offering the family a sum of money to find alternative accommodation, even though they were offered something earlier this week and it was in a terrible condition. And it's a scary and real situation in Malta where, these excavation works, these construction sites, and obviously it's being brought to the fore now by these geotechnical reports that, houses do collapse in Malta, and it's frightful, and obviously we'll have to see how this story unfolds, but hopefully it doesn't end in the same way that Miriam Patch's life did. Moving on to our second story. The FKNK, the hunting lobby in Malta, has suspended the membership of a hunter who allegedly shot down a protected bird species yesterday. Police were notified by a member of the public that a hunter had shot a protected bird species in Mizib. It is believed that the bird species was a honey buzzard, and the man that shot the bird was a 44-year-old man from Manikata. Police arrived on the site. They caught the man red-handed and did a search of his vehicle, where they found the protected bird species dead inside his vehicle. They also found feathers in the man's pockets that corresponded to the bird. So it seems at this point it's highly likely that he was the one that shot the bird, but obviously he's been arrested, he's being held at police headquarters. He will be arraigned in court, and if found guilty, FKNK said they will permanently revoke his membership. Currently, they've suspended it, they've identified the man and suspended it, but they said they would permanently revoke membership of this man. Obviously, you can't be shooting down protected bird species in Malta. I don't think we can say that enough, but it seems to still keep on happening. and and recently, Mizib was handed over to the hunting lobby to be taken care of. So in a way, it's good to see that they are taking action, but also they need to take perhaps more preemptive measures to stop this from happening.
I mean, it's a story that seems all too familiar. We go through this every year. The spring hunting season opens with restrictions on what can be hunted. In fact, the hunting season is open for quail. However, every year, despite this, we still get a number of illegalities and illegally shot birds. BirdLife, in fact, has said that this year they're struggling to keep up with the number of illegalities, having already voiced concerns about the opening of the season, given that a lot of law enforcement, a lot of policemen are occupied with the COVID effort and unable to police the countryside. On to our next story. A court has heard how former Progress Press director Vince Buhagiar received $240,000 from offshore companies owned by former OPM Chief of Staff Keith Schembri. Buhagiar was charged with money laundering back in March as part of an investigation which saw 11 others, including Schembri, charged with various offences, including bribery and corruption. Police investigators yesterday told the court that Buhagiar had received 3 installments amounting to over €240,000 from a Gibraltar-based company owned by Schembri. Buhagiar was unable to explain the funds to police during his interrogation, but they are believed to have been linked to a deal for the purchase of a printing press equipment by Progress Press back in 2011. Buhagiar has been accused of conspiring with Schembri and former Allied Group Managing Director Adrian Hillman to defraud the company out of some €6.1 million in the sale of the equipment. They were charged by the police following the completion of a magisterial inquiry into the allegations. The inquiry was launched back in 2017 following a request by former opposition leader Simon Busuttil. All those involved are currently out on bail as proceedings against them continue. Lovin Malta is obviously following this and will be bringing you the latest updates as they happen.
Yeah, 6.5 million euros is a lot of money, especially for a small island like Malta. It's believed that Schembri had laundered 5 million of that in kicks back to himself, Buhagiar, and Adrian Hillman. Adrian Hillman, who is still currently going on proceedings to be extradited to Malta, but we'll see. As Yannick said, we'll follow that and we'll be live in court obviously when further sittings are held. Moving on to our fourth story of today, the Malta entertainment lobby and artists in general have demanded an apology from Culture Minister Jose Herrera after he claimed that business is not in the IQ of artists. Answering questions by the media after a press conference, Herrera claimed that the art is a vocation and that the majority of artists aren't business-minded. Statements that obviously disappointed many artists, local artists, if not all local artists in Malta, who take their craft and passion very seriously and do consider it a full-time career and a full-time job, at least aspiring to do so. As well as the Malta Entertainment Industry and Arts Association, which demanded an apology from Herrera, claiming that this is the industry hardest hit by the pandemic, and rightfully so. I mean, we tend to forget, that Malta has quite a thriving arts and underground arts and entertainment industry, and it's been, since the very beginning, incredibly hard for artists who, struggle day to day anyways without the pandemic, let alone when, everything is closed and they haven't been able to perform shows or express themselves or, make money, and had to find alternatives. It's incredibly difficult, and to hear the head of, the Culture Ministry speak in this tone, even though maybe it was blown out of proportion in some sense, isn't encouraging for local artists and whatnot. And when you look at what's happening in the rest of the world in some other countries where they're trialing festival runs and seeing how they can possibly return to normal industry standards and start having festivals and concerts and shows. And you see Malta really is kind of lags behind in this sense, even when it comes to other areas like sports. So it's definitely discouraging to see. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Robert Bella did say after, that his government has the art sector interest at heart, but I think more needs to be done to kind of show that as opposed to just saying it.
Yeah, it's an interesting story, and despite the outrage, the opinions did seem to range from outrage to those who said they kind of understood what the minister was trying to say, but wished he could use maybe better language to bring his message across. On to our last story, a Maltese man who's critically ill with COVID-19 in India is awaiting a go-ahead to be evacuated to Malta. The man travelled to India with his wife earlier this month in order for them to adopt a baby girl. While there, he contracted COVID-19 and his condition has deteriorated since. Lovin Malta yesterday spoke with Ruben Gauci, Malta's High Commissioner in India, who said he was working around the clock in order to have the man evacuated to Malta. The plan is for the man to be airlifted using an air ambulance. However, at this stage, it is unclear when this will happen, given the complications involved in the case. A decision will be taken on the basis of what medical experts and aviation experts say. Gauci also confirmed that both the man's wife and his newly adopted daughter have tested negative for the virus. It is unclear at this stage whether they will be traveling back with him. It's very common for Maltese couples to travel to India to adopt children. In fact, Gauci said there are currently 3 other couples in India for that purpose. He said that they've been advised to remain in their hotel rooms and only leave if absolutely necessary. Unfortunately, the pandemic at the moment is raging in India. There's been a record, with a record 325,000 cases registered in a single day on Monday. It doesn't appear as though the situation is getting any better, though one hopes that it will over the coming weeks.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, India currently right now is ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic, a shortage of beds and oxygen, as I'm sure many of us are aware of with the reports on the media and photos that are coming out of the country. Like many other countries as well, Malta is, Gauci confirmed that Malta is trying to find ways to help India out, but it also sheds light on the fact that, while in the Western world, in Europe here and in the US, things seem to be moving forward, people are getting vaccinated, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. In some other countries that are maybe not as well off, or who suffer from huge amounts of poverty and whatnot, and inequality of wealth, there's a long way to go, for them. And India is just a prime example that this pandemic is here, and it could be for a few more years to come. So definitely sad to see, but hopefully that situation improves with the aid of other countries. With that being said, that brings us to the end of our news segment. But make sure to stick around with for an interview with Caroline Tissot, a representative from FELTOM, which represents English language teachers here in Malta. But before that, we're going to cut away to a quick video.
In Malta, we don't say.
So welcome back. We're here with Caroline Tissot from the Federation of English Language Teaching Organizations to discuss the current situation with English language schools in Malta. First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation, for joining us. So first, to start off with, very briefly, walk us through kind of what your organization does, who you represent.
Yes, the Federation is the Federation for English Language Teaching in Malta. It was set up over 30 years ago, and we represent 18 of the 35 English language schools on the island. Our main aim is to provide quality educational experiences for students who come to our island. We also lobby with the government to ensure that all the interests of the schools are met. And obviously we also promote our industry overseas in order to attract more students to our island.
So yesterday you issued a statement, yes. It was quite a strongly worded statement, saying you had been sort of left in the dark about when and how you would be allowed to continue operations. What is the current situation, and sort of have you been contacted by the authorities since yesterday?
We have been in touch with the authorities, but since the start of the pandemic last March, our schools were closed down for 3 months. Now, during the period between September and March are the quietest periods for the industry. And that is when we usually do start to promote for our summer months. That came at a very bad time, so the industry was already cash-strapped by then. We had some respite between July and August last year, when we still had some students coming in. And then again, we went back between September and March when it was a quiet period, and usually bookings start coming again in March for the summer. This year, yet again in March, we were closed down. We did expect to be open again to welcome students in April when the other schools opened, but we were told that we cannot do that now as well. So that was quite a blow to the industry.
And so have you been told that you would, so Malta has said it is going to open itself up for tourists on the 1st of June. Have you been told specifically that you are not allowed to open? I think yesterday you said that your intention is to open come the 1st of June.
That's correct. We haven't been given a date. The date is very imperative for us, and I'll tell you why. Our industry is unique in that if a person would like to travel overseas, they can wake up in the morning, just book themselves a flight and go abroad. Our industry requires planning because students do not just decide that they're going abroad. Anybody who wishes to go and study abroad knows that there's a lot of planning involved. And that is the reason why a date is very important. Without having a date, there are other countries, our competitive countries, who have already opened and who are welcoming students to their shores. And this is making our counterparts overseas, our agents, nervous because coming to Malta and studying online is not an option. We offer a unique experience where the student is involved, he or she is immersed in our country, our life, our way of life. There's only around 4 hours a day of tuition, and the rest they're gaining experience by moving around. I know the Prime Minister yesterday in his during the press conference, as well as Professor Gauci on the weekend, stated that our schools actually are not closed, but we are teaching online. It is totally a misconception in the sense that students come here, as I said, to get a fully immersed experience. Coming to Malta, staying at your residence to have your online tuition, but then being allowed to mingle in society, because they can go out, they are not restricted to indoors, is a bit of a conflicting issue. So this is something that needs to be dealt with. These students need to be allowed back into schools to continue their education.
So there's a feeling, I guess, that the authorities aren't appreciating the unique nature of the industry, perhaps, and the need for these students to
Yes, I think it is a misconception that needs to be dealt with and clarified with the authorities as soon as possible, because this has become a very urgent situation.
And when it comes to, for example, a lot of these students, I guess, live with families, Is that a consideration? Is there have you managed to work around the current restrictions, and is there a plan for how this can happen in line with the recommendations being made by the health authorities?
The ELT industry in Malta immediately abided by the rules and regulations set out by the health authorities. Obviously, we are Maltese as well. We have an interest in making sure that everybody is safe, because we have families, we have friends. It's the same as all the nation. It's important that the public is safe as well. Now, what is also important to understand is that if the industry fails, it is going to affect many other Maltese people who are dependent on the income from the ELT industry, in the sense. You've got host families who welcome students to their homes, and that generates an income for them, being if they enjoy the company, being if they need to top up their pension, whatever the case might be. We have service providers like our taxi services, so it is a whole domino effect. If the industry fails, then it's going to affect a lot more than just the business. It's not just about the English language schools, it is the whole other scenario of other service providers that will be affected.
How many people are employed in the sector? Like, is there, can you quantify the effect that this would have, or maybe even just an estimate?
Yes, in 2019, academic and non-academic staff within the schools were approximately close to 1,800.
Okay.
In 2020, following the start of the pandemic in March, that went down to approximately just over 1,000. I'm sorry, my class is sounding over.
Okay.
So we have to also bear in mind there is a hemorrhaging of staff, of professionals who are feeling so insecure because of the situation that they are thinking they're better off finding alternative employment. Now, this is going to affect the situation once we are back up and running again. So this is very important that we do not lose these very valuable staff members. However, that is just a school, and as I said before, there are other service providers who will be affected. So it's very hard to quantify exactly as a whole how many people will be involved.
And I mean, it's obviously been quite tough on the industry. Have some schools already had to close down? As in, have the problems already started, or is the industry still at this point managing to make it? And like, how important are these next few months?
Extremely important. Having this data is extremely important because that will generate revenue. That will allow schools from keeping afloat, from closing down. There are already 5 schools that have given up, unfortunately, and there are a large number of schools who feel that they will not make it till the end of July if this continues. So it is a very, very serious situation, actually.
So obviously it's not just a matter of saying, you know, you can open in July or perhaps financial aid. I guess you mentioned earlier is competition with other markets.
Yes.
How big is this competition, and for example, what are the repercussions of opening, say, in July? Would that still work, or is it not?
We need to have the date because, as I said earlier, the people need to plan to come. Opening in July means that our summer, which is the greatest revenue generator for the industry, is too late. Because usually preparations for July and August start happening in March. Our quieter periods are between September and the following March. We also, what I'd like to mention as well is a very, very important point is that in Malta at the moment there are approximately 2,000 in-house students already.
Okay.
Now these students are not being, when they originally came to Malta, Malta was open and they could attend in-house classes. Then obviously
So they came over the summer?
No, they were here in March because we have, in summer we had the greatest generator of students. Yeah. However, we also have, there's a slight misconception that I'd like to clarify, that yes, there are young students who come, the young learners who come. However, a large proportion of our students actually are 18 years and over and mature students. So they usually do come in the quieter periods and they come for long periods of time. And unless these students who are here at the moment, we cannot understand why they cannot go back into school to continue with their education in-house. As I said before, all schools have set up all the measures, temperatures taken every day, sanitization, social distancing, masks, etc. Excuse me. So it is important for us. We feel that these people, we cannot understand why these people are not allowed to go back because they are to school, because they are still allowed to integrate in society as a whole on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I guess it as you said, it hurts the reputation of the country as a leading destination for this type of education. So, I mean, what is the way forward for you, and what do you do from here?
We will be discussing with government to assist us. Obviously, the help that was announced yesterday will obviously help a little bit, but a lot more needs to be done. We need to save the industry. Don't forget that our industry generates, in 2019 alone, it generated close to 200 million to the Maltese economy, which is a hefty contribution. And if that is lost, it's going to affect accommodation providers, everybody that is involved that I mentioned earlier. So it's important that we save this industry. It is important that we sit down and find a way forward that will help us sustain the industry, help us save the schools, and help us assist also those other service providers who are also struggling and very, very concerned about the possibility of their survival.
Well, hopefully your appeals won't fall on deaf ears.
I'm sure they won't.
Thank you very, very much for being here with us.
Thank you for having us.
That's it from us. Thank you for watching, and have a day full of lovin'.